starting our Jacob's ladder swatch with a chain of 61 stitches. So I've chained 58 and I'm going to do the last 3 chains in purple, and you'll see why in a moment. So that was 58, 59, 60, 61. Now for our first row, we are going to double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. So here is 1, 2, 3, 4. And you decide where you want to do that double crochet, if you want to go under the top 2, under just the front loop or the back loop, or if you want to go under the bottom bump. And I'm going to go back here and go under the bottom bump. And here is my double crochet in the 4th chain from the hook. And now we chain 7 and skip 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we skip 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And now we want to double crochet in each of the next 5 chains. This is the 7th chain that we skipped, so we're not going to go in there, we're going to go into the next chain, okay, because we skipped the full 7. Okay, and so then in number 8, we're going to double crochet, and we're double crocheting in each of the next 5 chains. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we repeat that chain 7, skip 7, double crochet in each of the next 5 chains. We want to do that a total of 4 times. So we've done that only once. We need to do that 3 more times. So chain 7, skip 7, 1, 2, double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches. Now we've done the chain 7, skip 7, double crochet in each of the next 5 chains 2 times. We need to do it 2 more times for a total of 4. I have the chain 7, skip 7, double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Now I'm going to chain 7, skip 7 one more time. And then double crochet into each of the last 2 chains. And that is the end of that first row. I'm changing color for the next row, so I'm going to cut the purple, and I'm actually going to pull back the very last yarn over pull through since I'm changing the color. So you can see I still have one last yarn over and pull through to finish that double crochet, and I'm changing back to the gray, yarn over, pull through. Okay, so I've changed my color. Now for this next row, I'm going to chain 3, and this row is our repeat row. 1, 2, 3. Now we turn, and we're going to double crochet in the next stitch. Okay, that chain 3 counts as our first stitch. So that chain 3 is what comes out of this very first stitch. We're double crocheting into the next stitch. Chain 7. And then double crochet into each of the next 5 stitches. Chains are not usually counted as stitches when you're reading a pattern. So if it says, you know, in the next stitch, or if it gives you a stitch count at the end, it's not usually referring to a chain unless it says so. So when this says to double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, it's talking about these 5 double crochets. So we are going to go ahead and do that. Okay, we did the chain 7, double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches, but we need to do that 4 times. We only did it once, so now I'm going to go ahead and do that 3 more times. That is the chain 7 and double crochet in each of the next 5 stitches 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Now we chain 7 once again, and then double crochet into each of the last 2 stitches. Keep in mind the very last stitch, that last double crochet, is actually the chain 3 turning chain. There is that row. Now that is your repeat row. So keep on making that row over and over again. I am going to make it quite a few more times. I'm going to do a couple different color patterns, all right, so that in the end you can see what it all looks like. I will come back to you once I have a decent height worth of these rows, and I'll show you what the next step is. And here we have our Jacob's ladder stitch with the ladders. They have not yet been looped or woven or braided together. So you can see I started off with just every other row was a different color, just with 2 colors. Then I did 3 colors with changing color every row. And then I went up and I did 3 of the first color, 3 of the second color, 1 of the third, 3 of the first color, 3 of the second color. And we still have to do 1 of the third to finish this little color pattern. You can see I haven't put the last row of gray down to finish off this color pattern. And that is because the very last row, when you're doing the Jacob's ladder technique, needs to be done after you've woven or chained the ladders together. So let's talk about that. The first thing I'm going to do is pull this loop so it's nice and long. Okay, I don't want to accidentally unravel my piece here. And now let's talk about braiding these loops together. Choose a side to start on here. I'm going to start on this side over here. And you might want to get a crochet hook that's a little larger than the one you've been using. The first thing you're going to do is take the very bottom chain 7 or chain space of one of your ladders. So here is one ladder, another ladder, another ladder, and so on. And this is the very bottom rung or bottom chain space of one of my ladders. You're going to take that, and you have to decide if you're twisting clockwise or counterclockwise. You can call it to the left, to the right, whatever you want to call it. You just have to make the decision and stick with it every single time you twist. And that way you'll have nice continuity. So I'm going to take mine and go ahead and just twist this direction. That's kind of what comes naturally to me. And then place my crochet hook inside of that. Now I'm going to grab the next little piece of the ladder, the next chain space or rung, and pull it through. And you'll notice I'm not twisting anything now. The only part that gets the twist, the only time we do a twist, is in the very bottom rung or chain of the ladder. So I pulled the second one through. Now I'm going to go ahead and grab the next chain and just pull that through. Grab the next chain, pull that through, next chain space, pull it through, and you just keep on grabbing the next chain space and pulling it through the previous chain space. By doing this, you can see what you're doing is you're just making a giant chain on top of your work. Okay, so that's all we're going to do to chain or braid these little ladders. And now I have pulled the very last loop through, and I've got this loop on my crochet hook and nothing else to pull through it. Now if I just left it like that, then as soon as it got any sort of pull on it, it would just pull right out. And we don't want everything to unravel. So we're going to finish that off with our final row. Until you get to that final row, you can just use a stitch marker or a safety pin to kind of just pin it down. I just ran that little pin, the stitch marker, through the loop and then through the stitch kind of next to it, just to hold on to the loop so it won't go through. If I just ran the stitch marker through the loop, then I'd still be able to pull it through. The stitch marker would just come through too. So I've done this very first row of chains, and now I'm going to keep on looping each row of chains or each column of chains. Okay, so remember, you want to make sure you twist in the same direction. So last time I twisted the first chain this direction, and that is the same way I'm going to twist it again. Put my crochet hook in there, grab the next chain space and pull it through. Grab the next chain space and pull it through. I'm going to go ahead and chain or braid up all of these ladders, and then we will come back and I'll show you how to do the very last row. I've finished chaining or braiding or looping all of my little ladder parts, however you want to say that. And you can see that these first and last 2 stitches on all of my rows just kind of naturally fold under. I did that on purpose by only using the 2 stitches on either side of the first and the last ladder. It will fold under really nicely and put that ladder right on the very edge of your work, which I think is a really nice little look. If you do not want that, say you're joining this to something else, or you want it to just lay totally flat and have that full braid, then what you need to do is make sure you have at least 3 to 4 stitches before your first ladder and after your last ladder. Now, let's talk about finishing up this very last row. So the first thing we need to do is get our hook back into our piece. And you'll see that I only put the stitch marker on one of my final loops. I didn't put it on the rest, and that's just because these weren't really likely to come out between this yarn, and I'm not like doing a whole lot of manipulating to it, so they're pretty much staying where they are. For the last row, we are going to start off like we did before by chaining 3 and putting a double crochet in the next stitch. That chain 3 counts as the first double crochet, so we're not working into the first stitch, we're putting a double crochet into the second stitch. And now we get to the point where we before chained 7, but we're not going to chain 7 this time. If you have a stitch marker or safety pin in there, you want to take that out. Now you're going to insert your hook through the loop and just make a slip stitch. So yarn over, pull through everything. And that is going to hold on to your top loop so that it won't unravel. Now we are going to go ahead and make a double crochet into each of these 5 double crochets. And then we have reached another one of our ladders, so we are going to slip stitch into the top loop of that ladder. And we're going to continue in that manner all the way across. So we're doing the same row as we would have before, but instead of putting the chain 7s, we are slip stitching in the top of the ladder. I've slip stitched into the top of the very last ladder, and now I have the very last 2 stitches. I'm going to double crochet into each of them. Of course, the last one is the turning chain from the previous row. And here we have our Jacob's ladder piece. Okay, you can see the whole thing this way. You can see how the different color layouts react differently. One of the things I really love about Jacob's ladder is that the loop always appears on the row above. So you can see when you're making every other row a different color, then this gray loop ends up on top of the purple, and then this purple loop ends up on top of the gray. Here's the gray, there's the loop, it's on the purple. Here's the purple, there's the loop, it's on the gray. And it keeps doing that. So now that we have 3 colors, we have a green with a purple, a gray with a green, a purple with a gray. Green with a purple, gray with a green, purple with a gray, and so on. And then when we have the thicker stripes, you just have a little bump of the color before it in each stripe. So the little gray bumps up into the purple, the little purple bumps up into the gray, into the green, and the green bumps up into the gray. All right, so there are some different color techniques you can use within your Jacob's ladder. And look how nice this top looks once we've finished it all up. I want to tell you one more thing about the Jacob's ladder technique. And then anything else you want to learn, just pop on over to the post that's with this video, and it should give you more information you need, and you can of course reply to that post if you have any questions. One thing that you saw here is that we did the Jacob's ladder stitch within the double crochets, because this is the traditional way to do it. Now, a double crochet is 3 chains high. And we have chain 7s in between them, and that's because you need the 3 chains to go up the one side and 3 chains to come down the other side, and then 1 chain across. And so 3 plus 3 plus 1 makes 7. If we wanted to do the Jacob's ladder technique with a half double crochet, well, a half double crochet is 2 chains tall, right? So we would make our chain spaces in between the half double crochets 2 chains up, 2 chains down, and then 1 chain across. So 2 plus 2 plus 1 is 5. That loop would be 5. Say you wanted to do a treble crochet, which is 4 chains tall. You would make this space in between 4 chains up, 4 chains down, and 1 chain in between. 4 plus 4 plus 1 is 9. Okay, so this is a good way to figure out what length chain you need in between stitches. Now, if you're doing some sort of different fancy stitch pattern, so for example, I have a pattern that uses a modified spider stitch. It's single crochet, chain 2, single crochet, and that's as one little stitch, and it's each one is put inside the one before it, below it. I ended up having to do the full chain 7 with that because I had to try it out. I experimented by making little swatches and seeing how long the stitch was. I found that if I made it 5 chains tall, once I actually looped everything up, it started to gather up my piece. If I made it 9 chains tall, then you could see the little edges of the ladder when it was lying flat. What you want is you want this braid or chain to lie neatly on top of your fabric. So if you're playing around with stitch patterns, make sure that you do a swatch. If you can see the little legs, the little rungs of the ladder on the sides of the ladder, that means that your chain spaces are too long. If your piece is being gathered up and just giving it a little tug, because sometimes you do just need to give it a little tug to get everything to lay right, but if doing that doesn't work, it's still gathered up, that means your chain spaces are too short. This is also good to know because sometimes some of us crochet our chains really loosely and some people crochet their chains really tightly. So following this pattern exactly, some of you may find that your chain spaces are either too long or too short. You can adjust that by either doing more or less chains, or you can use a different size crochet hook. Whatever happens to work best for you. I do find though that more likely somebody is going to crochet too tight than too loose. So sometimes some people have to do 8 or 9 chains in between the double crochets just because of how tightly they might pull their chain spaces, their chain stitches. So there you go. I hope you found this very helpful and that you are now well on your way to mastering your Jacob's ladder techniques.